The following video details steps on how to acclimate your foster puppy to having a nail Dremel used on them. You do not have to use a Dremel if you don't want to buy one. If you are not comfortable using one, you can use regular nail clippers. But if you've got a Dremel and you're interested in how to use it and not have the dog pulling their foot away constantly, the following videos will help. I'm starting out sitting on the floor with my dog, but I could also do this seated from a chair position if I needed to. And so initially I'm just letting him interact with the Dremel. He's not seen this tool before, so I'm giving him a chance to sniff it over, to lick it, see what it tastes like. I don't want him to chew on it or anything like that, but he's allowed to investigate it before we start. So I'm tapping his feet with the Dremel. And every time I touch the Dremel to his foot, I say yes, and then I reward him. If he pulls his foot away from the Dremel, I'm not then chasing his foot down so that I can touch it. Yes. I take a little moment to pause, and then I try with the other foot instead. I don't even have the battery pack in the Dremel right now, so there is no way that that is accidentally going to get turned on before my dog is ready. Then I start moving towards, I'm going to touch your feet while I'm holding this tool, breaking down every part of this whole process. Yes. Yes. When I go to touch his left foot, he pulls his foot away from me rather than try to grab for that foot again. I switch to the opposite foot, and that goes a little more smoothly. Yes. I'm touching his toes with the Dremel. Every time I touch his toes, I say yes and I reward him. I'm gradually increasing the amount of pressure I'm putting against his nails and how much I'm moving the Dremel, but again, it's not turned on. So we haven't even started with the Dremel on yet. We take a moment to pause and he gets up to scratch himself. That lets me know that this is a little bit stressful for him. And so I'm giving him that time to scratch. If he had decided to get up and walk away at that point, then I would have let him. So I'm just giving him a moment to hang out. And then when he lays back down, we're ready to go again. And we can go for another minute or two. It's important to note that when I pick up my dog's foot, I'm not gripping his foot. His paw is resting on my open palm. So if he wants to jerk his foot away, he has the freedom to do that. And that makes this more cooperative than I'm forcing you to sit here and get your nails done. He's being very calm. He's not twitching his foot away. These are all good signs that he's getting used to what I'm doing. Yes. And then when we are finally done, I can take it as a good sign that when he gets up to come say hi to me, he grabs the Dremel in his mouth and walks away with it. So that lets me know that the Dremel itself isn't a scary thing because he's willing to try to play with it. That's not yours. Good boy. Now we're ready to move on to actually turning the Dremel on. I turn the Dremel on, I pair that sound with a treat. Yes. I can do a lot of repetitions of this. I don't show all the repetitions that I did prior to taking the video. And then I start pairing the sound of the Dremel with, I'm also going to touch your foot, but you're still going to get a treat. And then when I go to touch him with the Dremel, notice that I'm touching him with the bottom of it, so not the actual band that moves. So he's getting the feeling for the vibration, but not on his actual nail and not with the band. And again, every time I touch him, that gets paired with a treat.
Yes.
Dremels have high and low setting. I recommend starting on a low setting just to get the dog used to the feeling. And then as needed, once the dog is comfortable with the low setting, you can up it to the high setting. But the high setting is going to have much more vibration. It's going to have a louder sound overall.
Yes.
The dog that you're working with may take more time or less time at each of these individual steps. But if you see that the dog you're working with is avoiding you when you have the Dremel, or they keep pulling their feet away, then that's an indication you've moved too fast and you need to work more at the early steps so that the dog is comfortable. When the dog is ready to have their nails actually touched with the sanding band, start on the low setting. I still have treats, you just can't see them in this video. And every time I touch my puppy's nails with the Dremel, I'm going to give him a treat. So I start out initially just by touching him with the bottom of the Dremel so that he can feel the vibration. It's been a couple days since the first parts of this video. Notice that when I do grab my dog's foot to start working on his nails, I'm holding his foot in my open palm so that if he feels the need to pull his foot out of my hand, he can.
Yes.
I do a couple more repetitions of touching him with the Dremel and then giving him a treat, and then I actually start to get to work on his nails. And I'm only touching that band to his nail for just a moment. I'm not immediately going to jump into trying to fully get his nails done. I may only get a couple nails done at a time. I may not even get a full foot done, but that's okay. If you take the time to get the dog comfortable with this, it will be much better in the long run for both of you.
Yes.
You can still make a dog's toenail bleed if you hit the quick while you are using a Dremel. So that is not an issue only with clippers, but you can do that with a nail Dremel as well. So it's important to do little bits at a time, stop frequently, check the dog's nail to make sure that you haven't hit the quick. If you are using the Dremel on high setting, then the nail can actually start to heat up and become uncomfortable. So it's important for that reason as well, that you take a lot of breaks and just do little bits of the nail at a time. When you use this tool, if you are getting too close to the quick, what the nail will look like is there will be several rings, almost like on a tree trunk, and that lets you know that you are getting close to the nail bed jelly, and that if you continue to remove nail, you are very likely to make the dog start bleeding. I can use a Dremel to cut my dog's nails at the same angle that I would if I were using a regular pair of nail clippers, but I can also use the Dremel to shape my dog's nails a little bit. What I like to do is use a nail trimmer to trim my dog's toenails, and then I use the Dremel very briefly so that I can round out the edges so that they aren't quite as sharp. I've got my thumb on top of his foot there to keep his toenail from vibrating from the Dremel, which can happen a little bit, and so I'm not gripping very hard. If you were to pull his foot away, it would slide right out of my hand, but I'm just trying to provide some stability to his foot as I use that tool.